Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Voice of the Valleys, yet again with your host and friendly neighbourhood far-right thug, Mr. George Cresswell. Hope we're all doing well. Hope we're all having a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever we are. Certainly, if you are in the area at the moment of Ballymena in Northern Ireland, there has been Bedlam in Ballymena going on recently, which is what we're going to get into at the moment. This is the lead story for today, ladies and gentlemen. So what's happened in Ballymena recently? Very, very troubling thing happened where it's been alleged that two migrant youths seriously sexually assaulted two local young girls. And yeah, fair to say the locals in Ballymena, not very happy whatsoever, as has been evident by the 2 days. I'm not sure if it's still going on at the moment. This clip that is going to be coming up first in a moment, ladies and gentlemen, was posted 2 days ago. Some of these were posted today, and this was yesterday, so it could very well still be going on. But yeah, this is the bedlam that's going on in Ballymena at the moment in the aftermath of these two young girls being attacked. So locals from the area, in response to this, have targeted the house where these two youths were residing, and a lot of violent activity has taken place off the back of it. Very similar in some ways. We'll get into in a moment how it's a little bit different in context, but very similar in some ways to what we've been seeing in Los Angeles at the moment with the Mexicans, with the Mexican, or at least people waving Mexican flags, right? And assume they're Mexican. People with Mexican loyalties, should we say, outright rioting in Los Angeles. So this is a clip now, ladies and gentlemen, from Ballymena. And yeah, as you can see, it's not great what's going on out there at the moment. So as you can see, you've got police, you've got many different police vans, heavy-duty police response. People have laid a blockade out over the road, wherever this is. They've set bins on fire. So, yeah, very, very much so voicing their unhappiness that this has been allowed to continue. And not saying that the rioting is in any way justified necessarily whatsoever in that instance. But when you start to think about why this is happening, you certainly start to understand a little bit more of the locals' frustrations for sure. Because, as we'll get into a little bit later, it's very Southport-esque in the response from a lot of government and a lot of police officials, which I dare say, at least in my opinion of how I think this is going to go, is only going to succeed in making things even worse, succeed in making tensions even worse. So we have another clip for you coming up in a minute now, ladies and gentlemen. It's not just, by the way, in Ballymena by the looks. We also have a heavy police response coming in Portadown. So as you can see here, you've got police with riot shields. You've got a lot of debris across the road. You have so many riot police in this Portadown situation, which I'm pulling up on screen for you now, ladies and gentlemen. So it's a very quiet video. But you see there's a gentleman in the middle of the road, appears to be throwing stuff at police. Maybe a brick, maybe a bit of debris. Not 100% sure what it is. Oh no, wrong one. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I still get confused with the scenes sometimes as transitioning between the scenes. So this should, again, very not good to see this, obviously. So you have dogs being used, you know. Very, very tense scenes. Very, very tense scenes indeed. Coming out of all over Ireland in the aftermath of what has been allowed to happen to these two girls. We also, ladies and gentlemen, have a clip for you coming up now. Of the caption for this clip is Another angle of locals being snatched from the street last night in unmarked police vans. So yeah, a lot of tension over there at the moment, ladies and gentlemen. So you can see here that these vans are just unmarked white vans, and you have the police loading people onto these vans just in the middle of the night. So I'm not sure what these people's involvement in everything that's going on is. You have one gentleman, which you'll see coming through here, being taken away. It seems to be, or they seem to be going back into the van. But yeah, lot of tension. A lot of tension. Makes you wonder why, doesn't it, John? Makes you wonder why. What could be provoking this? What could be provoking these levels of tension and escalations in tension that we're seeing? Such as fireworks have been thrown at the PSNI. I'm not sure what that stands for. Police Service Northern Ireland, maybe. And tells you a lot when the crowds are basically laughing at the police and calling them pedo protectors. So this should be giving you a little bit of context now as to why the locals are very angry with what's been allowed to happen. That the state, in many instances, this one seemingly included, is more concerned with protecting their religion of multiculturalism and diversity as opposed to keeping people safe, particularly keeping the Irish people safe. And in many instances, it's women and young girls that suffer the worst consequences of this, because they'll get attacked, and when the men from the town want to enact some kind of justice, they'll be met with this kind of response, and just goes to show what side of the conflict, what side of this war is going on in Northern Ireland, it's going on in Britain, it's going on in many instances in America as well at the moment. What side the establishment is on. Obviously, that's changed a lot in America since Trump took over, seemingly. But in Britain and in Ireland, not so. Not so by a long shot. So here's that clip for you now, ladies and gentlemen. I believe he said, is you saying that's a petrol bomb? If that's true, again, very, very concerning. Because you do have to wonder, for a lot of these police, obviously a lot of them, as much as there's the ideological corruption that is set in with the police that we've covered extensively, you do have to wonder in some instances how many of them are going along with it seemingly because they just feel that it's their job, because it's what they have to do in many instances, and how much of them are suffering due to things that are coming down from things a lot higher than them. So how much are they suffering for their employers, for their higher ups, for their managers, for their sergeants, whoever it is, that are more concerned with pushing the multiculturalism, that are more concerned with indoctrination, that are more concerned with keeping the state-sponsored religion in place, despite the fact that in many instances it's outright killing people and is resulting in the complete ethnic and religious takeover of Ireland and of the UK. You have to wonder how many people are suffering because of this that aren't directly complicit in it. Take, for example, me was open on the last episode that I was recently relieved from one of the jobs that I was working due to views that I'd expressed on a past podcast. On past podcasts, should I say. And, it would be a case of if somebody was to come to the place that I was working and burn it down or attack it, whatnot, because of that, because there's a lot of people within that place that, you know, aren't necessarily massive adherents to like the religious aspect of the leftist orthodoxy that's made its way across the UK and across the Western world like a virus at the moment. So you do have to wonder again, how many of these police are doing it simply because they feel that they have no choice. Not necessarily saying what they're doing is good or it's justified because of that, but we can have empathy for those people and hope that you know, they weren't adversely affected, or at the very least those people who know that, for example, what they're doing is wrong but they don't know how to get out of it will be able to find their way out of it, but will be able to do so in a way that helps their community and still helps them, you know, to survive and prosper as well. Because a lot of these people who've been turned against their own countrymen and women, you know, they're imprisoned by this ideology as well, and want to hope that they get free and get on the same page as the truth as well, and be freed in that regard. So you have, for example, in Larne in Northern Ireland, you have a leisure centre being set on fire. This building has allegedly been targeted because the centre had been used to house what can be presumably illegal immigrants until they could be given homes elsewhere in Northern Ireland. So again, you don't just have police being attacked as well, you have other facilities that have aided in the takeover of Ireland, namely leisure centres being attacked as well. We're not having that music playing because it will probably get taken down from YouTube. So I didn't realize there was music in the background. So as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, there is fire in the doorway and there's also fire just outside. It's Larne Leisure Centre in Northern Ireland. So if we bring this back just a little bit, here you go. So you can see the people have set fire to the entrance area. And again, they set fire to the outside area as well. Seemingly youths, and again, this is the thing that it's a double-edged sword, really, in some instances now. It's good to see that the youth in Ireland are awake to the problem that they face. You just don't necessarily want them going down the route of getting themselves thrown in prison needlessly. So this is the thing that was really apparent to me when I was speaking with James Monroe, and about how when you know, he fell under the tutelage of Kenny Smith and the Homeland Party and stuff like that. He was saying, like, look, you can't do any good for your people but from behind the bars of a jail cell. So you need to be able to do things better in that regard and bring about true change. So it's good to see in some ways, because this is not in any way like the Mexican riots, which is a foreign body, a foreign political force exerting its force on a sovereign nation, like we saw in the LA, and trying to promote more open borders agenda, promote more economic sponging, promote more ethnic replacement, promote more destruction of the faith that made these nations strong. It's not doing it to promote more of the same of the destruction as we've already had. No, this is in protest to that destruction. This is like, no, we don't want our communities destroyed. We don't want our people to be made minorities in a homeland and eventually go extinct. No, we don't want those things. And if you're going to promote that, if you're going to aid in that, well, we're going to fight back. It's a bit like what you do with a rabid animal or a dog. You back it into a corner and it has nowhere to go. The only thing it can do is fight, and it will fight for its life. That's what these people are doing. That's what these people are doing. And the thing is, they're going to suffer potentially lifelong criminal proceedings because of it, because if the political system's always put in place, these guys will never be able to live it down legally. Their names will always be known, and they'll always be persecuted for this for the rest of their lives, whether it be they can't get jobs, whether it be whatever, okay? So if you're going to do things like this, you got to at least make sure you completely destroy the system that's in place. You have to win. If you're going to do a coup, you have to win, right? But again, you don't want to do things like this that don't bring about any meaningful change, and then the response is going to come down and it's going to be even worse, and then you might be spending the rest of your life behind a jail cell, and all the while the destruction of your country is going to continue at the same rate. So I understand when people say that. A lot of people who are critical of Tommy Robinson and people like that, for in my opinion, a lot of the good work that he has done, is that, look, he gets himself in prison all the bastard time. It's like he can't do any good for his people inside a jail cell. I don't know about you, the time that he was in jail recently was one of the longest times and one of the most really sad times in a lot of ways. And it was a breath of fresh air and a little bit of hope when he came out in many ways. But again, this is what happens when you force things onto people that they don't want, that they've always been against. You've ruined their political system, you've ruined their countries, you've put them in danger for not only their life, but their very existence as a people. You potentially put all of their future generations in danger. you cannot be surprised when they're angry. If you want an example of this, ladies and gentlemen, this is an example I've covered before. This is a migrant that made his way to Ireland. I believe at least he's still currently living in Ireland. And he literally says he's going to slice Irish children up. The person who posted this asks, when is enough enough? Why do why does any white person believe that we're not going to go down that route for what this person has said. But the video I want you to see, for example, ladies and gentlemen, this is an example of the people that the Irish government is focused on bringing into the country at the expense of its own citizens because it wants further political power. It wants to diminish the vote and the say of the regular Irish person so that they cannot politically object to the destruction of their countries and the enslavement of their people anymore. And they will bring in people like this, no matter how dangerous they are, no matter how depraved they are, in order to accomplish that ambition.
Irish, I'm coming on top of you now. I'm gonna be slicing your babies, kids, and you before everybody. Get ready, man, because you pissed me off too much.
This piece of human...
So there we go. So there we go. So that's obviously, I would imagine that's the person that posted this video, just came up then. But point being, the point that they are making, which is not necessarily a controversial point whatsoever, is that I wouldn't go as far to say, for example, when they say, why does any white person believe that not all non-whites are bad? You can't say that whatsoever. You know? You can't say that. But that being said, you can make the point that she's making, that the Irish government is bringing in all of these people that don't belong in Ireland, that should never belong in Ireland, should never be anywhere near us with their beliefs, customs, and outlook. And the fact that they are bringing them in en masse for their own political power is an act of treason. That's what you always have to bring it back to. You don't have to dehumanize in this way every single person that doesn't share your skin pigmentation in order to accomplish that. And it's wrong to do that. It's absolutely wrong to do that. But at this point, it's getting to the point now where people do have to recognize that a lot of the people coming over here and doing the things that they're doing are doing it partly because they're racially motivated. They're doing it in many ways out of their own perceived racial supremacy. And that's an important point to make. Not only religious supremacy, but also racial supremacy. It is a factor. It is a factor. And it's one that needs to be addressed. The biggest problem is that people, namely people in the police, people in government, have tried to stifle any of that discussion because they know it will completely blow open their entire ideology. They're importing people like this with no good reason because they want their vote. Regardless of what they'll do to the Irish kids, it's why the kids in Southport lost their lives. Axel Rudy Cabana and his family never should have been in this country. Why is he still here? Why he hasn't been hung from the end of a rope, I'll never know. But this is the point being, is that the people of Ireland certainly do have very good reason to be angry. Can say that doesn't necessarily justify rioting and all of these things and the targeting of innocents and all of that. You can say that. Pardon me. But I'll give you an example now as well, ladies and gentlemen, of why the people in Ireland are so angry. Because they have very little in terms of political voice. Because like we see in Wales, in the Welsh Senate, where they are more concerned with illegal migrants and quote-unquote asylum seekers than they are with the Welsh people. That's not unique to Wales. It's not unique to England. It's also in Ireland. And it's also the case in like the US, and many US representatives are trying to make that case as well. So, for example, you have Jerry Carroll here protesting for illegal migrants to stay in Ireland. And he actually likens it to state violence if they were to be deported, which is the only rightful course of action. Quite simply, what do you do if somebody comes into your house without your consent? Somebody comes into your house without permission. What do you do? And what should you be well within your rights to do? Remove them from your house. Well, this country is our home. This country is the home of the Irish people. Scotland is the home of the Scottish people. England is the home of the English people. Wales is the home of the Welsh people. And we should be able to kick out anybody that does not have our permission to be in our home. I don't think that is in any way controversial. But it is controversial and likened to state violence, according to many elected representatives, such as Mr. Carroll here.
I think I have to say what's happened here is a form of state violence. The state, the Home Office, the British government is saying that your mother and your brother can't stay here.
Home Office heavily run by migrants and Muslims as well, by the way. It's basically a Mohammedan migrant office.
Even though they want to stay here, even though they've contributed so much to this community and have so much more to offer if they were allowed to work and if their status changed. So that's a message for the British government and the Home Office. Keir Starmer, I'm sure people here don't have any love for Keir Starmer that I don't. He's supposed to be a human rights lawyer. Show some human rights, show some compassion, show a backbone, intervene and allow this family to...
Human rights lawyer that I believe wasn't he more concerned with like foreign paedophiles and getting terrorists off the hook so they could stay in the country? Yeah, that kind of human rights lawyer, Keir Starmer. You're not a great person to appeal to here. The fact of the matter is, if these people are here illegally, then they have no right to be here. They have no right to be here. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. And they need to go back to, well, first off, you could argue they need to go back to wherever country they came from. Presumably they came from France or someone like that. And then if they wanted to remove them back to their country of origin, then that's up to them. It shouldn't be the Irish taxpayer, the Welsh taxpayer, English, Scottish taxpayer, French taxpayer, German, Spanish. Big news coming out of Spain at the moment with the allegations, or apparently the revelations have come out as the 2014 presidential election was rigged. That was a very, very interesting revelation that came out recently. Spain is another place in uproar at the moment. But these are the interests that our elected representatives, as we call them, are focused on. Focus on foreign interests, because where's the human rights of the Irish people? Where's the human rights of the Irish people to self-determination in the homeland? Where's the rights of the Irish people not to have their land colonized by, Islam? And they want to retain their Catholicism or their Protestantism. Where's the rights of those people? Where's the rights of them to bring their kids up in a safe, unrecognizable country? No, of course not. That is genocide, ladies and gentlemen. That is against the human rights. That is against the UN Refugee Convention and all of that stuff. You know? You can't do that. That's racist. That's xenophobic. That's all of this stuff, ladies and gentlemen. No, you can't have that. But they can do it in Africa. They can chant "Kill the Boer" and campaign for a complete ethnic state in South Africa, for example. And nobody has a problem when you say Africa for the Africans, or whatever else. Arabia for Arabs or anything like that. Nobody has a problem when you say that. The minute when you say Europe for Europeans, you're a fascist, Nazi, white supremacist. So eventually, when you have things like this, and this is why the Irish people are so angry, why they're literally revolting in many instances, because they're wondering how much more they can take. How much more can we take? At the end of the day, people who have been charged with protection of the nation and protection of its people are showing that they don't intend to do that. In many instances, they intend to put them on the front line and be sacrificed to the gods of multiculturalism and leftism so that they can get more political power and, more often than not, more money as well. So what are the Irish people, just the regular Irish person, or the regular Welsh person, or the regular Scottish person, what are they really supposed to do? What are they really supposed to do? When they feel as though they've run out of political recourse, political solutions, what other option do you have? It's always the question you need to ask. And as many people have been saying, I'm not sure we're at that point yet, but many people have been saying, the sentiment being, is that we are out of political solutions. That if that is true, if we are out of political solutions, well, you have to think, what solutions do we have? And the police didn't do any better, ladies and gentlemen. So you have to take this with a little bit of branding for, again, one of my favorite accounts on X at the moment goes right up there with Retard Finder. And this is Wanker Finder. So I find wankers. And you have to take a look at, he has the big I'm a Wanker trophy on the desk. But this, I believe, is one of the chiefs of police that were policing the incidents in Ballymena recently. And this will tell you, keep this in mind as well, when you think of how the police responded in Southport, ladies and gentlemen, when they knew the extent of what happened and they knew the threat that Axel Rudikabana caused, that this is their response, and they don't see any problem with this response.
Last night saw significant sustained disorder in Ballymena. This violence was clearly racially motivated and targeted at our minority ethnic community and the police. It was racist thuggery, pure and simply, and any attempt to justify or explain it as something else is misplaced. Last night saw significant sustained disorder.
When young kids are, when young girls are raped by foreigners, it can never be the fact that young girls were raped by foreigners that caused the outbreak, that caused the violence. It can never be that. No, it's always the fact that the people being targeted are of a different skin color, and that they just don't like them, so that's why they rioted. No, it's never to do with the young girls that got raped or killed in the case of Southport, for example. It's never to do with Axel Rudikabana having Al Qaeda manuals and ricin, having an arsenal of weapons, and then going up and stabbing three young girls, and then the media lying about it. It's nothing to do with the media lying about it, saying he was a Welsh Christian choir boy or whatever. No, it's nothing to do with that. It's nothing to do with people that have been lied to, gaslit for so long about what's been going on, that eventually now there needs to be somewhere for that energy to go. And then, of course, you blame them. It's that constant provocation, the middle-level violence, stuff that's never just overt takeover. It's never the government going in and just executing people in an overt fashion. No, it's flooding it with migrants of a hostile ideology that will do it for you. And then when the locals react, as they should be able to do, and the locals defend themselves, defend their people, defend their roots, defend their country, defend their families, defend their faith, that's when they're called racist, xenophobic. Oh, they're targeting this community. It's racist thuggery. Literally, you could put this over the top of what Keir Starmer said after Southport, and it would not look amiss. And this is probably just going to make tensions even worse. The next time something happens, let's God forbid, let's pray that nothing happens, but say something was to happen in Ireland at the moment on the scale of something that happened in like Southport, or if they get a terrorist attack at a concert or something like that, as has happened in the past. I dread to think, when people remember this, because they'll remember this man, they'll remember every politician, and they'll remember every sentiment, every word. They'll remember every time that they were called far-right, racist, xenophobic, for having genuine concerns about their communities, their people, their future, their country, their faith. They will remember all the gaslighting. They will remember all the lies they were told. And God knows what it will result in, because it will make them extremely angry. And more people are seeing it day by day. More and more people are seeing it day by day. And I just dread to think this is going to go. It says a lot when you have mainstream newspaper outlets now that are openly talking about the possibility of civil war and stuff like that. So you do have, for example, a statistic which is here, ladies and gentlemen. So despite making up 4% of the population, this is from a Freedom of Information Act request from, it doesn't have a date on it. Oh yeah, it does. Here it is. From 2014 to 2018, this is from. So making up less than 4% of the population, non-Indigenous migrants make up 40% of those charged with rape in Northern Ireland. Be sure the people of Ballymena are racist and evil for objecting to this statistical fact. So what we would expect, ladies and gentlemen, for example, is that this is a common point that people like to make, is that, oh, the majority of sexual assaults or the majority of rapes, whatever, white people do those, so it's not migrants that are the problem, whenever these things pop up. And the thing is, if you have a country that's, say, 90% white people and 10% anything else, right? Or if you have a country that's either the opposite way, right? You would expect the majority, just based on logic and based on the amount of people that were there, you would expect the majority of anything to come out of the majority of people that are there. So, for example, it wouldn't be a surprise, for example, for the majority of thefts to be happening via white people. If it was a 90% white place, right? You wouldn't be out of place. It would be equally morally abhorrent. It would be equally morally abhorrent. This isn't to say that it's good, but it's to say that you would expect, logically, more crimes to occur in a majority white area by white people than anything else, simply because there's more white people. Similarly, you might expect more white people to work certain jobs because there's more white people and all of these things, right? That's not necessarily controversial. It's like saying that you would expect the majority of crimes in a predominantly black area or predominantly Asian area, predominantly Chinese area, let's say, to be committed by those people that are in the majority, simply because they're in the majority. That's not controversial. But when you have 4% of a population, so let's just say you have, again, 90% white, 5%, or say 6%, whatever. I'm not even going to put labels on it so people can't call me anything, right? But let's just say you have, again, 6% and 4% of someone else. And that 4%, so 4 out of 100, were responsible for 40%, nearly half, of the rapes that occur. You would say, fuck, maybe there's a problem there. Maybe there's a problem there that goes just beyond what they look like. And say, why the hell are they committing so much of this crime? That's a natural question you would have. So when you hear, for example, that in Northern Ireland, for example, 4% of the population make up 40% of those charged with rape, it's massively overrepresentative for their percentage of the population. So that tells you, there's something deeply wrong with this section of the population and that something needs to be done about it. That's the point that people don't get. And they'll call you racist, they'll call you evil and all of these things for stating that. But if that is the case, it's like in America for a moment, where black people, despite making up, I think it's about 6% of the population, are responsible for about 50% of all the murders, something like that. So you would expect in a regular society that they might be responsible for 6%. They might be responsible for 6% of those things. But if they're responsible for, let's do a quick bit of napkin math, about just over 8 times the percentage of the population, so the murders they're committing is 8 times the percentage representation in the population, that's very, very concerning. Similarly here, 10 times, they're making up 10 times the population representation of the overall rape statistics in Northern Ireland, these non-Indigenous people. That tells you that Ireland has a lot of serious problems with these non-Indigenous people. I'm sorry if that makes you uncomfortable. Doesn't make it any less true. And speaking of potentially, again, problems with non-Indigenous people, Not that this person's a non-Indigenous person or anything like that. But I mentioned before that I wanted to bring this video up for you, ladies and gentlemen, that Nigel Farage I was actually kind of hopeful for reform in Wales. But again, they've taken what appears to be a massive series of missteps at the moment in Wales. Now, the one thing I do appreciate is they are planning on scrapping the Nation of Sanctuary plan. A couple of other parties have come out and said that they're going to do the same. I believe abolish the Welsh Assembly Party, and Gwlad have said that they're going to come out and do it as well, which is good to see. But they say here, how would you define a Welsh person? This is a question that Nigel Farage was asked, and I brought this up on the last episode, and he said that somebody's been here for 5 to 10 years, paid taxes, because the Welsh is just a community. The Welsh are just a community. Again, reducing an entire ethnic group, a distinct people in a distinct land, a distinct part of the country, are just a community. And again, this goes right in hand with the stuff that he's saying about the English at the moment, where he's outright saying, and Tice is outright saying, they don't care about the ethnic takeover and the demographic takeover and the religious takeover of the UK, because, as Tice said, he'll be long gone by that point, so he doesn't have any reason to care. Doesn't have any reason to care about his... I don't know if he has any kids or anything like that, but doesn't have any reason to care about people's kids that are growing up in this land or anything like that. No, of course, he'll probably fuck off to Dubai anyway. So, this was Nigel Farage at the Reform UK Wales event that was a few days ago.
You say that you would like to give priority to people from Wales for housing. How would you define a Welsh person?
Well, it's a very fair question from your channel. We hadn't proposed the Welsh language test. No, look, it's got to be somebody who's lived and is settled in Wales, has paid taxes and obeyed the law. And if someone's done that for a 5 or 10 year period, then I think they've every right to say that they're fully part of the Welsh community.
You say that...
Nothing to do with Welsh ancestry. Nothing to do with Welsh blood. Nothing to do with where your roots go. Nothing to do with any of that. Nothing to do with where you're Indigenous to. Nothing to do with any of that. You can come from whatever end of the fucking world you come from. On a small boat, whatever. You come over to this country. You pay taxes for 5 years. And in Nigel's eyes, you're just as Welsh as anybody else. Not true. Not okay. Very big, needless L for reform. But it's on par with them. It's on par for them because, as I said, they don't care, pardon me, about how the demographic of the UK is changing. They don't care that the ethnic English will be a minority in England in the next 15 years. They've outright said they don't care. So why would you expect Wales to be any different? And that's why, even though I do like a lot of the things that they were planning to bring in versus how we have it right now, I would urge people really to start looking elsewhere while we still have that little bit of time. It's kind of sad. I was hoping that the guys from Gwlad were going to be able to have a sit down with me, but they decided not to. So I thought it would have been good to have a conversation with one of them to help get their message out there as well. Sadly not. Sadly not. Maybe they're up to the election. Maybe they will. Who knows? Obviously, we have the election next year. So, certainly hope so. But, ayo. I think they probably, if you're interested in Welsh independence, put it that way, if you're interested in Welsh independence and you actually do want an alternative that seems to be at least somewhat going to put the Welsh people first in that pursuit, again, it's up for debate whether that would be a good thing or a bad thing. It does seem as though public opinion is definitely leaning in the way that right now, at least, that's not a good thing. However, if you are leaning, somebody who is that way leaning and does want that, then I would certainly urge you to go for somebody like Gwlad versus, at least from what I've seen, versus quote-unquote nationalists and separatists in Plaid Cymru, who will continue the Islamification and replacement of Wales. Make no mistake about it. And this is evident, ladies and gentlemen, when we have here, this is our final bit for today. A 12-year-old boy was punished and branded racist for reading out joke from schoolbook. and he was reading out a joke from Roald Dahl's book, Charlie and the Glass Elevator. This is the book that he was reading. The boy read out a joke from the book, which was as following. I should find out when this book was written first, actually. When was this book written? So this book was written by Roald Dahl, originally published in 1972. That's when this book was originally published. And the joke goes as follows. Why is it difficult to make telephone calls in China? Because there are so many wings and so many wongs, you might wing the wrong number. So that's the joke, ladies and gentlemen. That's the kind of mental, scarring, emotional damage kind of post, kind of wordplay that we're dealing with here. Funny thing is here, though, you have a guy who's one of the guys I follow on social media called Jonathan Wong. And he says here, the Wongs take it on the chin. It's funny. If it's funny, it's not racist. Here, bookmark this post for your yellow card. So that's what he said in the comments of this. But the boy himself was given a 2-hour detention and grilled over his views by teachers horrified of what he said. Not only are the teachers such snowflakes that they can't hear this and just have a little bit of a giggle about it, they took this and said, no, you think that you as this child think that Asian people or Chinese people are awful and evil, and you're an evil white oppressor and all of these things, and you need to be given a 2-hour struggle session as a 12-year-old. These struggle sessions are things that most adults wouldn't know how to deal with. Okay, these struggle sessions that they try to put you through to go along with this orthodoxy are things most adults are not going to know how to deal with. So God help you if you're a 12-year-old kid and then they try to grill you over the things because you're so evil on all of these things. The deputy head teacher responded to a complaint by the boy's family saying, quote, the joke marginalizes Chinese people by mocking their pronunciation of English words. While this joke appears in a Roald Dahl book, its presence in literature does not make its use appropriate. So that's the thing. We're now criminalizing comedy, basically. And that's where we really start going downhill in a lot of ways. And we start criminalizing comedy. Because a lot of the times you only really know when a regime like this is close to collapse, is when people start laughing and not crying. You know? The thing that really put it into perspective in America, as it was Rob Schneider, actually, on a video I was watching, that made this point. He's like, as soon as you start laughing at it, as soon as you get to the point where you're laughing at it, because of how silly it is, and not, crying and worrying about it. I mean, I don't mean crying about it in the cope kind of crying. I mean crying in the literal sense, right? Crying out for help, that kind of idea. When you get to that point, pretty much it's on the cusp of defeat. Because in order for things like this to stay in place, they need to be taken seriously. In order for people to still continue pushing the anti-racist, leftist, decolonized stuff, all of this stuff, right? All this leftist religious orthodoxy. The only way it's going to stay in is if we let it stay in, because we perceive it as this big moral law of the universe, so to speak, which it really isn't. But once you realize that it isn't, you can't help but just start laughing at it. Because of how silly it is. Because of the people that go out wearing silly things and saying silly things and doing silly things all the while thinking they're these super serious revolutionaries that are taking it to power, taking it to the patriarchy and all of these things, right? As soon as you laugh at it, not only are you showing the stupidity of it and how funny it is, but you're showing you're not scared of it anymore. When you are, crying and hoping and pleading and all of these things, it's a case of, again, you're taking it seriously. You're playing their games like you're playing the devil's game, right? You're playing the devil's game. But as soon as you take that just a little step back and realize it's just a little bit silly, a lot of these things are just a little bit silly, to say the least, not to mention a lot of them absolutely, degenerate in a lot of ways, but they're a little bit silly, to say the least. The guys walking about in, on top of the fire truck, naked, grinding in thongs, all of that kind of stuff. It's a little bit silly, just a little bit silly. The ones in the multicolored frigging dog masks that are barking at pride marks would be like, little tiny bit silly. The person getting angry on social media or losing their shit because somebody used the wrong 2-letter word to describe them or 3-letter word to describe them in their own mind, and they're having this lovely purple-haired, multi-pierced breakdown. Just a little bit silly. And more often than not, aside from when kids are involved and they're exposed to the sexual degeneracy stuff, aside from that, it's kind of funny. And you can't help but laugh. And it's when that happens, when everybody can do that, the system cannot stand anymore. Because people are like, no, this is stupid. This is stupid. So when they're criminalizing comedy like this, it's a sign that I think that they know that, obviously. But it's a sign that we need to do everything we can to keep things like this alive, even though people have deemed it unacceptable and stuff like that. But we need to be able to continue to make jokes, because if we can't make jokes and we can't laugh about things, then it does make you wonder if ever the system will come down. Because at least we have to be able to laugh at it. Anyway, that'll do it for the day. Thank you very much for watching, as always, guys. Hope you found it useful. Have a good morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever you are. Take care. Diolch yn fawr for watching. And I will see you again next time. Hwyl fawr and Godspeed.